So good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm James Sinclair. I'm the CEO of Enterprise Alumni. We're the market-leading alumni management and engagement platform. And today I am thrilled to introduce our guests for so many reasons that we're going to dig into. Probably the most obvious reason is so many of our customers use Salesforce as their backbone CRM. There's not a conversation that we are on with a customer that's not talking about something they're doing within the Salesforce environment. And so there's so much crossover between understanding community and kind of Salesforce's place in that world and what it does to exist for that kind of source of truth. I think the second, and perhaps the most least obvious reason for many people on this call is Salesforce has been a leader in community engagement since day one. I've been part of Trailblazers and part of your community since you guys first launched. There's really no company on earth that has had a community like yours to get people kind of ramped up and rolling in their software. And I think you guys set that bar. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, but you guys set that bar for kind of your customers being your community. So this is not a new concept. I know for a lot of our customers on the phone, community is quite new. You know, maybe they're a law firm or they're an accountant or they're professional services where accountant isn't part of their DNA. And the third reason why I'm super excited to talk about this is because Salesforce is really known as such an incredible advocate for its people. And so as you see these awards that Salesforce wins, it's going to be really interesting to hear how that kind of applies as you're walking out the door and throwing your Lenovo in the trash and going to your next place. What does that mean to still be an advocate? So I'm super excited to talk to you guys. And with that, I want to introduce our amazing guests. I have Theresa Ludvigson, the VP of Global Onboarding and Loyalty Programs, and Mira Pitkin, the Director of Employee Recruiting. So with that, I want to kick off with you, Theresa, if I might, which is I would just love for you to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, but most importantly, why is alumni even under your jurisdiction, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Oh my gosh, James, what a great start. So again, I'm Theresa Ludvigson and I lead global onboarding and our loyalty programs here at Salesforce. And I've been at Salesforce for 14 years. So before I joined, I think it was employee 1,700. Now we have over 65,000 employees. And so it's been really incredible just to see the company's growth, but then also see we've been very intentional about keeping our culture going, right? Our culture is our differentiator. And the biggest piece of our culture is really this concept of family, how we treat all our employees, whether they're here or when they depart from us, they're always going to be part of that Salesforce family. And so I've had many roles over the years at the company, but for about 6 years, I led our sales enablement for our commercial and enterprise sales groups. And so during that time, you think the company's growing and people are coming in, I'm training them, you build those connections with those employees. And, 14 years later, I've led global onboarding and I'm still welcoming those employees. And so you build those connections. And I think what's the greatest thing about leading this alumni program is I get to reconnect with those individuals I met when they first walked in through Salesforce. So it's really an honor where I get to welcome them. I see them leave, but I still stay engaged with them no matter where they're at in their careers.
I love that so much. And yeah, that intro, I'll accept the check when you're ready to send that over for my intro. Mira, with that, I want to jump, directly to, recruiting, because there's two conversations everyone has. Number one, create a community, treat people great, do all those things. But there's obviously a little bit of what's in it for the company. If we do this, what is the value we see and how does it impact our bottom line? When you think about this from kind of a recruiting perspective, you have Indeed, you have LinkedIn, you have all of these sources. How does alumni come into kind of that conversation?
Thank you, James. And again, thank you for having me today. And I'm really excited to share the time with Theresa as well. So when it comes to recruiting and Salesforce, you already mentioned that Salesforce is great. We have got a great brand. But what we need to remember, and everyone needs to remember, one of Salesforce's value is equality. And equality is really embedded in everything we do, including hiring. So we do have got different strategies when it comes to hiring, when it comes to recruiting. And that's, we're going to be approaching passive candidates through LinkedIn, through other career sites, through other social media, and so on. It's FutureForce, it's referrals, it's internal hiring, and all this extends to alumni as well. So, of course, alumni is a big part of our talent pool. But then when it comes back to hiring and actually making the hiring decision, we do really need to remember that we need to focus on inclusive hiring. So regardless of where you come from, regardless of who you know, we're still going to focus when it comes to hiring on competencies. And everyone is going to go through the same process. But when it comes to alumni, it is a big part because it's a big talent pool. So all our recruiters, everyone is really trained to understand the market, understand the network, understand where candidates are coming from. But once you are introduced, once you decide to rejoin Salesforce or joining as a new one, you're always going to go through the same process. And it's really important to remember because Salesforce has got its values, and the values are equality, it's customer success, it's trust, and it's innovation. So we are guided by these values, and it comes to hiring, and it comes to when engaging with candidates, when engaging with our employees, and it goes to alumni as well.
Yeah, I love that concept of inclusivity. I think just because you're alumni, it doesn't necessarily mean we're just going to open the door and let you waltz in. We still have to be, equality. I think that's a really important point. I want to jump back to that. So, Theresa, I guess from your side, when people talk about the employee experience, I mean, you're global head of onboarding, so it's an amazing duality. You see them at hello and you see them at goodbye. Mm-hmm. Does the company, when they think about their employee experience, kind of how does alumni fit into it? And how do you kind of position that to employees? Do you position it at onboarding like, hey, we know leaving's inevitable, and when you do, we can't wait to keep part of the family? How is that kind of communicated to your alumni?
Well, for our new hires, when they come through, something that I really want to impress upon them is that Salesforce is a career destination, right? When I look at my own career, having started out as an account executive, I was in sales, to training our salespeople, to working with our product. We had acquired a company, worked on our product team, worked in our marketing department. I worked in talent development. I've had a lot of roles, and I feel like there's no reason you should be leaving Salesforce. So I always tell that to our new hires. But we want to celebrate our alumni and say like, hey, if you end up leaving Salesforce, we're still going to celebrate you. We're still going to recognize you. We bring them into this community, right? So we have over 15,000 alumni. And we send them quarterly newsletters through our Marketing Cloud product. So they're getting newsletters, they're staying in touch with what's going on. My colleague TJ and I, we interview our alumni. So we get to interview them and we do alumni spotlights to see where are they now. And we're promoting those alumni spotlights within our Salesforce ecosystem. So our alumni are getting those spotlights and kind of seeing that we're still celebrating and showcasing our alumni, but our current employees also get those spotlights. So they're seeing like, wow, this is a company that really cares. Even if I leave these Salesforce virtual walls, I'm still part of the Salesforce family. So we're doing that. Some other things that we're doing, like we create networking events for alumni. We actually do volunteer events for alumni so they can get together. And most recently, what's pretty interesting is that one of our big values is around giving back. And so we have a product called Philanthropy Cloud, where now our employees, when they're at Salesforce, they're used to volunteer time off, they're used to corporate giving. And now, even though they're not part of Salesforce, they can use this product to track their volunteer hours, to track their donations. So we're really extending that platform to them so they can still live those values after they've left Salesforce. And then one last thing is that, we want to create that differentiated experience for employees. So you talked about building that community. So when our alumni do come back, we call them our boomerang employees. And we've created a group on our Slack channel for our boomerangs. So our boomerang can reconnect. They could talk about where they left, why they came back. So they're kind of part of that community. And we actually have our boomerangs come speak to new hires too on their orientation day. So those boomerangs can say, hey, I left and I'm back. And this is why I came back. This is a great company. So we're doing alumni spotlights. We're doing those boomerang spotlights. And we're, again, our Salesforce employees are marketing and kind of builds that employer brand for us too.
Yeah, and and I loved it. I saw on your careers site that you focus on those spotlights. And so people looking for a job are able to read about people who have left. And it's such a great maneuver from kind of a sales and a positioning, which is, look, we might be a career destination, but if you leave, we're going to celebrate you. And here's where you might go. And here are the amazing things you might accomplish. And I wanted to kind of talk to you, and I don't know if it's you, Mira, or you, Theresa, of like, the decision to kind of house those alumni spotlights on the careers site, how did that even come to be? Was it just you were looking for a home, or it just seemed like the right place?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a little bit of both, looking for a home, but it's also the right place because on our career site, you see these alumni stories, you see these boomerang stories, and we also have a referral program. So typically organizations have an employee referral program. We have an alumni referral program so that if our alumni refer candidates into Salesforce and they get hired, we actually make a charitable donation in their name to thank them for that referral. So that's another thing that we're doing from a program perspective.
Wow. Do you let them choose the where the donation goes?
Yes.
Wow, that's fantastic. So if we continue that career conversation, and I don't want to stick too hard on what's in it for the company, recruiting, but I guess, Mira, from your perspective, if we were to say, yes, we understand equality, but a boomerang hire, there's obviously some value in time to productivity, time to hire, they know some people, references, those type of areas. So, how do you approach that? So you want equality, you want the same process for everybody, but the ability to just ring someone's manager and be like, hey, did you used to work with them? How were they? And to get that live reference. Is that kind of, how do you process the kind of enormous advantages of not having to go through a recruiter, of not having to do external references?
So, James, I might disappoint you on this answer, but again, this would be jumping the gun, and it would be saying that the alumni has got a preferential treatment or preferential process. So, again, when it comes to hiring and recruiting, we do really need to focus on the equality, on the competencies, on the candidate experience, and focusing on inclusive hiring. Again, the alumni is a big part. And as Theresa already said, it's hiring people into Salesforce, but alumni is also someone who we hire for. We are committed to growing our ecosystem, which is our partners, our customers. And the great thing about this whole program is that we recognize there is a great talent, and our partners can hire people that left Salesforce. Our customers can hire people from who left Salesforce as well. But when it comes to hiring at Salesforce, no one's gonna.
Equality is key. I hear you.
No one's gonna jump the process, and you know what? And it's great, right? So that's what we love about Salesforce, and that's what we all hear about Salesforce. That's what we hear why people want to join Salesforce, why we are the career destination, and it is really focusing on what matters and focusing on our values. So honestly, regardless of where you come from, you will be assessed on competencies. And the best candidate is going to be selected based on the competencies. That's the only way how we can avoid bias, how we can avoid anything that is in our way to select the right candidate. And that goes with equality. And our commitment is there. So that's what we do. So I'm sorry if I disappointed you.
No, I asked again exactly for that reason, Mira, because you have so many people sitting on this call who, they want equality, they want no bias, they want no any of that bias, but it's very difficult when your old friend, Sam phones you and says, can I come back? And you're like, oh my God, I would love to work with you again. Yeah. So that that's why I ask again. It's not because I was hoping you would change your answer. It's kind of how you handle it, but also that there is some value. Should someone with the right competencies come back and they are a boomerang, do you see that increase in productivity? Do they stay longer? Do you ask those type of questions of why come back?
What I do see when they're back, there's some really great competitive intelligence that you receive, right? So within that Slack channel, they're listing, say if I left, I came back, I'm Theresa, I was at Oracle. And so now within our platform, because we're deeply embedded. I mean, Salesforce drinks our own champagne. We use Salesforce like crazy, right? So you think about our Salesforce analytics product, we're able to see here are the people that were at prior companies, and now for the potential sales deal, we have some really great competitive intelligence. So that's when it comes through once they're through the door. But to Mira's point, really focusing on equality, we have so many things in place to make sure that there is no bias when we're interviewing. But once they're in, there's a lot of great value that they're bringing to the table.
Amazing. Yeah, I've got to imagine that Slack channel is just a wealth of just knowledge and information. I mean, there's something to be said about people leaving, getting some skills on the outside, some new networks, and then bringing them back home, essentially.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something really special too. I mean, when we think about boomerangs, a lot of our boomerang population comes through our acquisitions, right? So we're a very highly acquisitive software company. And so what's been really awesome, so that's all part of my program too, is how do we welcome our acquired employees? But imagine when you're if you're coming to a welcome event, you just got acquired, there's a lot of unknowns. But if you can come to an event and you see this panel of these employees that have come back through acquisition and they're sharing their energy and excitement for Salesforce, that makes that landing much softer, So there's definitely some really great stories that we have around our alumni community and how they end up coming back.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe I can jump a little bit to the kind of this hard KPI of like, what does Salesforce as a company expect from this program? Implicitly, explicitly, whatever that might mean. Like, how do you define success, report on success? Do you even report on success? How is that kind of approached internally? And what I'm trying to tie that to is we all know this is the right thing to do. We all instinctively know that being good to people is good for business. But many of the people on this call will say, that's awesome. I still have to put together a report, a spreadsheet, a budget, X, Y, and Z. How do you kind of approach that?
So I'll speak specifically for my programs, is that when we look at the stories that we publish, we're really looking at not necessarily the pipeline that we're generating of candidates. We're actually looking at how much employer brand activity are we getting out there. So for example, when we do an alumni spotlight and we share that on LinkedIn, we're able to see that it's getting 60,000 hits across LinkedIn. And that 60,000 amount of hits equates to thousands of dollars of marketing spend. So that's where we see that business impact. We're able to get the employer brand out there, and people are clicking on these stories because they're real stories about people and their journeys. And when you see that alumni spotlight or you see that boomerang spotlight, those employees have touched a lot of people. So within their network, it just starts spreading like rapid fire. And, we're sending those stories out through Marketing Cloud. We're getting them through LinkedIn. We're able to track how much traction those are getting. So I think that's a big piece of it from an impact perspective. And I'll hand it over to Mira to see like, how do you measure it?
So, James, could you repeat the questions once more, please?
Yes, and I do already know answer to Mira is equality. And so and it's a good
important
thing, and I know, and it's a good thing, and thank God for that. So the really was question was like, how do you define success? How do you track success when someone says, why bother with the alumni program, or when you want to fight for more budget? So both the negative and the positive. The negative of why spend money on people that have left, you could spend it on people that are here, or when you're going for more budget and more resources and selling this program, how do you kind of quantify the value of alumni?
So I think if I go back, well, yes, of course, equality, our values and all that, that's what matters the most. But when it comes to success, to me, alumni really is, and the success is the brand, and people want to return, and people are going to talk about it. And we're going to send surveys so when it comes to recruiting, we're going to send surveys to candidates who are coming through our interview process, how they have been, how their process been, how they have felt, and so on. So that's definitely, our NPS scores and so on, our brand on places like Glassdoor, the feedback, what people are talking about. So that's really important to us. But it's, it does go back to the employee experience and candidate experience. So you have got candidate experience, someone who has not worked for Salesforce before, who wants to join. The way how we connect with them, the way how we put them through the process is really important because they talk about it. That raises our brand, that raises really people being excited about joining. So me as a recruiter, even though I now lead a team, I'm still a recruiter. And actually finding a career for someone, it's a life event for people. And just really seeing them coming join Salesforce, it's amazing. People are really excited to come and join Salesforce. But then how they are treated at Salesforce, and really be focusing on the values. We are focusing on people. We really are empathetic company, an ethical company. And that goes into the people. So it's the people experience, employee experience. So as Theresa already said, yes, you're going to join Salesforce, and maybe there is going to be a point of your career when you decide to move on. You just think, hey, maybe it is a time. At the moment, I don't see a different role I want to move into. I will try and explore other opportunities. That happens. But the way how we treated them, these people are going to leave and they will feel supported. So they will want to come back, or they're going to tell someone else, hey, I heard from someone who worked for Salesforce and how amazing Salesforce is, how how I was treated when I decided to leave the company. And that's the importance. So it's the brand, and it's really about how people talk about us. And me as a recruiter, every time I interview someone, every time I speak to someone, if someone asks me, why do you work for Salesforce? Why should I join Salesforce? And it's like, you know what? Don't ask me. Just ask our customers, ask our partners, ask the people, who don't work at Salesforce, because they're really going to tell you the truth. I work for Salesforce because I love Salesforce, but the people who left or who are not directly employed, they're really going to tell you the truth. So the brand is so important.
Well, I think to Mira's point on the brand, so we don't want to be like, oh, this is your last week at Salesforce, boo-hoo, sad day, right? We actually kind of celebrate them on their next chapter. So the thing that we've started is we've created these offboarding alumni office hours. You almost think of it as like a graduation, right? When you leave school, like we want to still celebrate all the contributions you made in your time here. So in those office hours, we're helping to answer those frequently asked questions that alumni might have. We also introduce them to Salesforce Alumni Network and get them excited about how even once you leave, you're going to get this quarterly newsletter. We're going to hear your story, stay in touch about your future careers and your success, right? There will still be volunteer events that you can participate in. So we're kind of getting them excited to say, like, hey, this is how I'm ending potentially, but maybe returning later on, right? And that's what we're doing. It's not just like an email, see you later. We're actually making those human connections with them before they leave.
Can I ask a question about that office hours? That's per alumni, or you just host it once a month? It's just alumni office hours?
We do it 2 times a month, and it's in partnership with our employee success shared services team, because people have those questions like, wait, how do I get my employment verification done? Or how do I do these things once I've left? So we want to make sure that we've equipped them with everything they need and kind of give them a teaser and get them excited about how their journey with us doesn't end once they leave the company.
I love that so much. Once they have left, can they join those office hours again, or is it just as you're leaving?
It's just when they're leaving, but our door is always open. So we have a email alias that they can always reach out to if they have different questions as they come.
I love that concept of an office hours. So I love 2 concepts. Number one is celebrating them. The reason they're leaving is because someone has viewed their time at Salesforce as of value. Like, oh, you're at Salesforce, you've learned, you've been equipped, your competencies have increased. To Mira's point, we now want you. And I assume you see a large amount of people when they do leave, go to partners and stay in the ecosystem, because that's who everyone wants. And there's a kind of a conversation that you hear quite a lot around software companies, which is actually you're just as valuable at a customer as you are coming back. So when people think about those boomerang hires, they're like, actually, if you're at a customer, or if we can place you at a customer, we're just as happy there. So number one, I love that office hours. I'm sure there's a lot of people on this call who are going to be like, oh, that's such a good idea to celebrate them and have that. So when you continue, what it sounds like is you have overwhelming support across your organization for this. And it may well have been through brute force, prayer circles, and fighting over your entire career. But it sounds like every group is kind of moderately aligned. And when you hear a lot of programs that are out there, a lot of them are not basement silos, but they don't have access to the social media to broadcast the stories. They don't have access to the career website. They don't have access to to create the Slack channels. I guess, how have you been able to push that agenda of community and doing the right thing? Is it, again, because of, your veteran status as Salesforce, or is it just that's how Salesforce works?
I just think that throughout the years I've been here, like the people are our differentiator. We've always cared so much about our people. And we also really want to, I think we've done a lot in terms of trailblazing our values and kind of living our values, right? You talked about Salesforce receiving recognition and awards about being a great place to work. But we're not just getting awards for being a great place to work. We're getting awards on what we're doing from an innovation perspective, what we're doing from an equality perspective in terms of giving back. And so we want to make sure that all of those Salesforce employees that may have left our organization, they're still living those values where they are today. So I'll give you an example. We have a program here internally called Salesforce. And again, to Mira's point, we really champion equality, right? But we have a program here called the Warm Line, and we have that in the United States. And it's a safe space for women and underrepresented minorities to call in if they need some support within the organization, right? And so we had a fireside chat last month with the leader of the Warm Line, and we had our alumni join that fireside chat to hear these best practices, to think about how can they create a Warm Line or safe space within their organizations to ensure that women and URMs are also treated fairly and equally and feel supported and that sense of belonging in the workplace. And so we're trying to share those best practices with our alumni so they can then bring them to those organizations. And it makes us feel good, right? That we're innovating in the space and we're ensuring that other companies are doing the same thing. So there's that purpose behind it. And that's what makes the work feel very, very valuable and rewarding.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go into the next question, kind of what's in it for the alumni. But before I do, how do you, I guess, Mira, I'll start with you. How do you deal with this? I mean, the scale of your program and the size of your program, whether or not you have 10, 20, 50,000 people enrolled, you have hundreds of thousands of alumni, around the world. How do you approach kind of this global nature? And not everyone is in San Francisco, not everyone is on the West Coast. And how do you even manage the global nature of this program? And I feel like this is a good time also to shout out TJ, who coordinated this entire program for us. And I know he's on your team, Theresa, who's just fab. But, aside from TJ, how do you guys globally handle, alumni recruiting or employee recruiting or alumni globally? Maybe Mira, I can kick that off with you.
So I will go to what recruitment does. Again, Theresa will likely answer a little bit more on the whole program. But when it comes to recruiting, so, we live in a century when there's a lot of tools, automation, digital. So all our recruiters are trained to use the talent data. So we, of course, know who what candidates or what the market looks like, who is alumni to Salesforce. So we approach all these people, of course, as well. But again, we're going to approach them as a part of the search. So we will approach different talent pools. We're going to approach different channels, different sites. And again, going back to the competencies, and we will focus on what is important for the job. What is the competency for the job to select the candidate? But thankfully, these days, we have got a lot of these great tools that we can use for recruiting. So it is quite exciting to be a recruiter these days. But I think Theresa will tell you a little bit more on the program, how it is run exactly.
Yeah, we depend very heavily on technology to help scale our programs. So as I'm talking about this alumni network and what we've created from a program perspective, there's a lot of offerings, right? We've got this Philanthropy Cloud product that we're using. We've got our VTO events. We've got networking events. We partner for recruiting to do recruiting events. We do so much. The team is myself and TJ on the actual alumni network, right? That is it's just two of us. And I mean, let's be real. TJ does like 90% of the work. I'm just like the figurehead of it. TJ's listening, so I want to make sure I give him some credit there. But it's about just, we're able to use our technology. And so we have our system of record for our employees, right? And we're able to integrate that with using MuleSoft into our Marketing Cloud platform. And so we're able to send these nurture emails to our alumni. So when they're leaving, we already know we can put them on an email journey so that they're constantly getting these touch points. They can opt out if they need to, but they're always in the loop. And TJ is not physically, or myself are not physically sending these emails through Outlook or Gmail. We just create it once and then it automates. And we do that for our new hire email journeys too. So when you join Salesforce, your emails look different based on whether you're a new hire in Europe, whether you're in the mayor, whether you're in sales, if you're a people leader, they're all customized, but we create it once, it integrates for our system of record, and then it just goes. And so that's been a big game changer for us in terms of scale. And again, be able to track the open rate, the click rate. We're able to see that engagement from our alumni.
Right. I mean, I don't think anyone on this call was expecting you to say it's you and TJ. People think Salesforce and they think they need an army. And the reality is you don't need an army. You just need someone, passionate that's got some ability to exert their power and influence in the organization. Yeah. And you need someone to do all the work, TJ. And and I totally appreciate that. So do you feel that there are alumni, Asia Pacific on the other side of the world who feel like they're not as part of this community because they're not as close to home? Or is that something you've thought about? Does it not exist?
I don't think so at all. I think if you go to salesforce.com/alumni, you'll see we feature a lot of stories of our APAC alumni and boomerangs that have come back. So we're very intentional. So again, to Mira's point, #equality. We make sure that we are featuring our alumni from all around the world, all different genders. Like we're just making sure that everyone's equally represented.
I love that. I love that so much. And I'm just going to process this. It's you and TJ, because again, there's so many people on the call who are like, how many people do I need? Do you get support from shared services for kind of some of the mundane, like, oh, I need a pay slip. Oh, I need this. How does that work for you guys?
Okay.
And I love the appearance he's about to make. I cannot wait.
Oh yeah, he's handing me an iPad right now because Joe, he's crawling on the floor like it makes a difference.
No problem, Theresa. I'm going to ask Mira a question and give you a second. Don't even worry about it. I love it. Mira, I'm going to turn to you and I'll give Theresa a free moment. I guess what I want to talk about a little bit more is at some point it does come to KPI. Someone's going to say to you, hey, is a boomerang more effective? And I know we have competencies, I know we have equality, but is a boomerang, do they stay longer? Do they make up a large percentage of our population? Do you have any kind of data that you're willing to share? And if not, we're happy to lob this to Theresa around kind of alumni at Salesforce, even the size of that Slack group. I mean, is there any other data that people listening in who look at Salesforce like 1 second, it's just 2 people, what do they have to show for it?
Okay, so I will leave this question to answer to Theresa, because when it comes to the KPIs, how effective people actually are afterwards, it is not exactly part of my role, and I don't look into the data regularly. So I definitely don't want to disclose something I'm not sure about. So I will leave that to Theresa. She will be able to answer.
The one thing I would say, and Mira might be able to validate this, but a lot of times our alumni that come back as boomerangs, they're coming in different capacities, right? They left Salesforce, they learned some a different skill set, and they're coming back into a new role. So I wouldn't just say like ex-sales people that leave, or they just come back into sales. Well, they could be doing something totally different, or they get more focused into like a certain niche product or an industry. So I wouldn't say it's like apples to apples when they come back. But, from a back to the employer brand perspective, it's a very powerful story when our boomerangs come back and they share with new hires that the grass wasn't necessarily greener on the other side, and we're able to market that. That to me is really huge.
I mean, that seems to be the consistent theme. Sorry, go ahead, Mira, please.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to what Theresa mentioned. So yes, definitely. Like in my years with Salesforce, I know several people that I knew when I joined. They moved on and they came in very different role. Myself, I actually don't know people who came back in exactly the same role. So it is probably a little bit more challenging, more complex to put exact KPIs on that. But what is exciting is really to see people just coming back. And they are coming in new roles. And that's roles because when they left, that role might have not even been available because we're growing. So if you left 2 years ago, that role that you returned today for might have not been there at all. And I think, sorry, go ahead. And I think as Theresa mentioned as well, like acquisitions, because we grow obviously naturally through hiring, but also through acquisitions. And again, you're going to have people that were with Salesforce, they decided to move on. And, 2 years later, 3 years later, they actually join us for acquisitions. I know several people like this, and it's exciting to see that because they come with just new experience. It's all part of the journey. It's all part of your career journey to work for a company, move on, and maybe come back. But you're only going to come back if you have been treated right in the company, if you have been celebrated, if you have been supported. And again, that's why I'm going back to candidate experience, going back to employee experience, going back to equality. So you're not going to be returning to a place if you were not happy before, if you were not celebrated.
Yeah. Can I say when we welcome them back, something that we do that I love is we talked about the Boomerang Slack channel, but when we have our new hire orientations, we'll ask back when we were before COVID, we'd ask like, raise your hand if you're a boomerang, and they would stand up. They're like, I left and I came back and I'm so excited to be back. So these are your major cheerleaders and spokespeople for the company. But something that we do that also kind of surprise them is we send them, and we still do this today, but we send them a box of brownies and the label on them to surprise them at their homes. And the brownies say, "Welcome home. We're so glad you're back." So it's like a little personalized note from Salesforce thanking them for coming back to their home. And then we also have these really fun shirts. And it says like Salesforce Boomerang. And on the back of it, it says, "I'm back." And so,
love that.
Yeah, so they love that. They'll wear those in the office, walk around like, "Hey, I left, I came back." And so they are like these cheerleaders and spokespeople for our company.
That's such a clever idea. I love that.
I might have to leave and come back now.
So I was going to say, it's funny, when we spoke with LinkedIn alumni about their program, there is a LinkedIn alumni t-shirt that you can only get when you leave. And there's this joke that I always think about, which is I wonder if some people are leaving because they just want the t-shirt that people are walking around in. But I love this conversation of celebrating them on the way out. I love the idea of office hours. I double love this idea of brownies, welcome home with the t-shirt. These are just small things. These are not high cost items to just make people smile, to be human, and that they're going to talk about for days. I mean, they've got to be so impactful. And again, being run out of a program. Theresa, I want to go back to that original question, which is, whilst you are running strategy, guidance, leadership, and with TJ and the execution operations, to what extent do you kind of get to lob stuff over to shared services or another group, the day-to-day stuff?
Yeah. So I have a really amazing story about this. So our shared services team, they use our Service Cloud product, right? And we call that Concierge internally here at Salesforce. That's the brand of it. And when we were hiring, this is crazy. I think when we were about a 30,000 employee company, we had 35 employees on the shared services team managing cases and tickets. Then we became a 40,000 person employee. We still had 35 people on the shared services team managing cases and tickets. Now at over 60,000 employees, we still have 35 people managing cases and tickets because we're leveraging technology, and that's helping us scale. There's amazing case management. There's a knowledge base of articles. A lot of the questions they have are all self-service. So we are able to, yes, lob these questions to the shared services team, but they're able to churn out the same type of amazing productivity at a crazy global scale with the very same back office number of employees servicing double the size. And so I can't impart enough how important technology is to any type of, business strategy or operation that you have.
Yeah, we hear that a lot where people are coming to us and they're saying, we have to answer the same question 96 times. And at some point you're like, anytime you're doing something manual and repetitive, automate. And when we make no secret of it, a lot of our customers use the same Salesforce technologies as their underpinning in their organization. So it's always a conversation. But I think you can't run a program like you have without being highly effective as a technology organization. We talk about the sequential email campaigns. That's going to be new for a lot of people on this call. And just to explain it, it's that concept that, day 1, you get this email. I assume day 9, you get this email. Day 27, you get this email.
Exactly.
Right?
And exactly. You're explaining that perfectly. So it's this Marketing Cloud email journey. But I think that's really important for those on the call. You don't just write email content just to write it. You have to look at the data first. So at Salesforce, we first looked at what were the common cases and tickets that would be logged by employees, whether they're new hires or whether they're alumni. And by looking at that data, we then crafted those emails to get sent at the right time. So for example, from a new hire perspective, say if you're in sales, you're a sales profile, and we were able to look in the data within our Service Cloud system, be like, okay, on day 8, a lot of our salespeople are asking how to apply for a corporate Amex. So why don't we do this? On day 7, we send a Marketing Cloud email saying, hey, interested in Amex? This is how you do it, right? And so we are pushing the content to them before they anticipate the question, one, creating a better user experience, and also helping to diffuse any questions that might be coming into our shared services team.
Who defines that? Who sits down and says, is that just you, Theresa, of just like, again, brute force from your experience?
I mean, the data just speaks for itself, right? So when people are logging tickets and cases in our Service Cloud instance, we can see what type of person is logging the case, what region they're based out of, at what day from their start date are they asking that particular question. So by looking at the data, and if they come in beautiful charts and graphs, we're like, okay, this is the content that we need to be feeding into our new hires. So then we send that through Marketing Cloud. We're able to track the engagement. We're able to track the open rate and click-through rate. And so I know we're kind of backtracking from alumni to onboarding, but we're having a 95% open rate throughout the entire first year because we know that the content is relevant. So you could reverse that and do that for your alumni too. just to ensure that there's always that engagement.
I mean, that is such a big learning again for people on this call of sequential campaigns, preempting what they're going to need. These are not expensive steps. And I think there's a lot of people on this call that are like, where do I start? There's a lot of people that have alumni communities, 1/10 of the size of yours, who are overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis because they're trying to manage it with kind of willpower and strength. And that's not a strategy for growth. You know, to you, Mira, how do you, I guess, onboard your new recruiters? How do you introduce alumni as a talent pool to them? How does that conversation go?
So I would say, again, it's just in using the tools, training, knowing how to access the market talent, and really understanding how to use it and interpret the data. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. There is not as much magic when it comes to recruiting.
And we also, I think it's enabling all our recruiters as well as our hiring managers. So to be able to interview candidates, you are required to take a training on inclusive hiring here at Salesforce, where you're hiring without bias, where you don't make assumptions when you look at a resume that this is what this person is qualified to do. So we go through a lot of motions, and we're really creating that. We're really ensuring that if you're going to be hiring here at Salesforce, you need to understand what inclusive hiring means, and you can't bring in that bias. And it's really amazing. We have hiring managers here that have been here for 5+ years, and they're still learning, right? And it's the feedback we're getting from these trainings are really incredible. Like one example is, and I'll ask you, James, like think about, some people might think it's a best practice that if there's a group interview that you share feedback with each other, right? On how that candidate did. But that's actually very uninclusive. Like you interview someone and you just send that feedback of what you personally think. You don't have discussions beforehand, because then you are, there's bias, right? And your mind can be made up or changed. Like when we interview, like if I'm on a panel interview, I'm looking for competencies and I'll get assigned. Theresa, you look at these 2 competencies for this candidate. That is all you're looking at. This, Mira, you're looking for these 2 competencies. That is all you're looking at. And you submit that feedback, and you're not having discussions previously of this candidate. We want to make sure everything is super equal. And Mira, you can maybe speak more to that. I'm not the recruiting expert, but as a hiring manager, I'm like, this is a game changer. Thank you for educating me, Salesforce, on how I should be hiring with inclusivity.
I'm so happy, Theresa, hearing you to say this, because in recruiting, we keep saying that all the time. And hearing a leader, hearing a business leader to say all this, it means a lot, because it does go all back again to the equality, to inclusive hiring, to treating everyone in the same way. So interview training, using the same tools, using the competencies, but really working in partnership with the business. So recruitment and business works in a partnership. We really define the competence. We define what the role is like and what we need to focus on. And that's how we select the right candidates. But that will again go to everyone, not just alumni.
Yep, I know. I wasn't going to ask you, Mira. I know it's everyone. So let me go even wider. So Theresa, it's, you and TJ running this program. How do you find out like all these things that you could, I guess, piggyback on, or all these things that you can be accessing? Like, I literally just got a text message from someone saying, ask Theresa how she finds out knowledge of things she can do with her alumni on a day-to-day basis. Because a lot of people are looking at like, what do I do with them? I have this pool here, and I think there's a question in there somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. So when we do our spotlights for alumni, within our alumni community, we send, and within our newsletter example, we'll say, hey, are you interested in getting your story featured? Here's your chance to really, augment your brand on your social brand. So people submit, they'll fill out a quick survey, and then we kind of read through that to see who has a really compelling story. So for example, when we had Earth Month, we had an alumni who had a startup called Clever Carbon. And in that startup, she's helping people understand what their carbon footprint is. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so timely.
I love that.
We had another spotlight, and it released on National Dog Day or National Pet Day, where we had an alumni who left Salesforce to start his own dog training company. We're like, that's what we're using, So we kind of look at what's happening,
right.
Just socially, and then we kind of pick stories that way. But we have, again, we're partnering with Google right now to do a program called I Am Remarkable. So for those of you that have heard it, it's about how do we elevate women's voices so they feel that they can talk about what makes them great? Because it's really hard sometimes for women to be very vocal about their accomplishments. So that program is running within Salesforce for employees. And we're like, why not share this for alumni, share this goodness? And so we opened up this training for alumni to take this I Am Remarkable training. And in that small cohort, that small setting, they kind of see like the power that they have to create small ripples of change. And we actually had an alumni who took that training, loved it so much that they got certified to be an I Am Remarkable facilitator. So it just depends on like what's happening within Salesforce and is it relevant for alumni to also adopt and take advantage of.
Do you see any feedback of kind of the alumni program, of how it's viewed in the organization? Do you see it ever being pigeonholed, or no, everyone this is Salesforce culture? I guess I'm looking for the negative side of alumni programs. And I'm not meaning to put that in a negative picture, Theresa, but as you think about other companies who run these programs and they're trying to get out of their silo, they're trying to get their senior leadership to be like, look, this is amazing. Look at what we have. But it's tough because they're like, well, is it? They left. If they hadn't have left, we might love them a bit more. Did you ever have that sequence? Has that been a change in Salesforce in kind of celebrating the leavers, or is that always?
I would even say that our executive leadership team, they're getting updates on what we're doing from an alumni program perspective as well. And we had one, I won't say which leader, but he had received the spotlight and he emailed me, said, could we spotlight X employee because I want him back, right? And so there's that idea of like, let's put these feelers out there, because this is, we know when we lose awesome people, right? And so what can we do to show them that no matter where they're at, we still think they're amazing, right? Because I think that gives them a sense that the door hasn't completely closed.
Can I ask more questions on that email to senior leadership?
Yeah.
And I know you're probably strict on what you can and can't say. How often, how big a group? Like, is it pie charts and numbers, or is it empathy and a sentence? How do you communicate?
I think it's empathy in a sentence. I feel like one thing I love about this company, even though we've gotten so big, is that everyone's accessible. And I think that's one of the things that boomerangs say when they come back. They're like, wow, I didn't realize how easy it was to innovate, bring your ideas, reach out to senior leadership if you had feedback or suggestions. Those are things they missed when they left Salesforce. And so with me, like when I'm sending updates to the leadership team, I'm pretty real. Like these people have known me since before I was even married. Like the funny joke of me in Salesforce is like, when I joined Salesforce, I was single, I got engaged, I got married, I had 2 children, I got divorced, but Salesforce has been my constant, right? And so this team knows me, that like I grew up at Salesforce. So I think when I do give them updates, it really comes from a place of just realness and empathy and just saying, hey, this is what we're doing and we care so much about our people. And that's a message that they also are, feel very strongly about. They do see the value of us keeping people connected. And, one of the things that you might have heard is no matter when you're in the Salesforce ecosystem, you're part of our family, right? That is deeply rooted in our company. And so I just presented to about 500 new hires yesterday on this big culture training that we have. And I said, tell me if you're a part of the Salesforce family before you were actually a Salesforce employee. So you're part of the Salesforce family when you're a customer, you're part of the Salesforce family when you're a partner, if you're a trailblazer, even if you're a part of the Salesforce, if you live in a community where Salesforce office is, right? You're a part of our family. And so it's really cool to see these new hires now share their story about, I was a partner, I was a customer. And the reason why I came to Salesforce is because I always felt part of that family. So from an alumni perspective, you're always part of our family. And you'll see, TJ's very good. And everyone's like, who's this TJ guy? But, when someone posts on LinkedIn, like this is, spent 8 years at Salesforce, it's been an amazing ride. I'm really going to miss my colleagues. TJ sees that on LinkedIn. He's commenting, don't forget to join the alumni network. We're going to miss you. Right. I don't know how he sees these things. He's magic. He works magic. But right away, publicly, people see we're not upset that you left. We want to stay connected.
Yeah, so I love that concept. And again, these are not expensive tasks that require a good team. These are human tasks of someone's leaving, they're celebrating their moment. It takes nothing to wish them the best of luck. It takes nothing to press like. It takes nothing to formally recognize their impact. And so I think of all the takeaways that I've heard so far, that's the biggest one of everything that you're doing. None of them are mind-blowing. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean that amazingly, that you've created a system and a structure that works for your organization, that doesn't take massive resources, and that, you know, you've scaled with the times and using your own technology. And, you know, I think that was the one thing I wrote down about the Philanthropy Cloud, because I got a couple of messages in the Q&A asking, 1 second, what is this Philanthropy Cloud? And I don't want to force you into a sales pitch. So I promise afterwards I will look into that.
Yeah. But I think one thing is very cool is that, when we do a spotlight, that employee or that alumni post their spotlight on their LinkedIn, right? And you just see these comments come down, like, oh my gosh, how amazing that Salesforce showcased you. How amazing that the company cares about what you're doing now. And like that genuine appreciation, like you can't pay for that, right?
Gold.
And so it's so awesome. And I mean, we love doing it. And one thing personally, selfishly, I love doing these because I get to reconnect with people that I met years ago and kind of just see how they're doing. It's just like, it's like a long lost friend. You just pick up where you left off and you just kind of get excited to see where they're at today.
It's also a great sales model of kind of getting the word of the alumni program out there for perhaps people who left historically, when they see one of their old colleagues post that, like, oh, maybe I didn't know it, or maybe I did know it, but I hadn't got to it. So I assume it's a good acquisition tool as well, kind of using your alumni as your channel. I have a couple of questions while we have, about 7 minutes left. If it's okay, can I transition to those?
Yes, of course.
Mira, how do you keep your team honest? You talk about equality, talk about inclusivity. How do you manage that process with all of the bias that just does exist? Wow, that's a big question. That could take 2 hours to respond.
It can, but again, it goes back to the values. So as we mentioned at the start, so the Salesforce values is equality, it's customer success, it's also trust. And so, and it's how you really treat people, how you treat the team. So if it goes to recruiting and being honest and taking bias out, it's the interview training, it's the enablement to making sure that everyone is comfortable talking about it, and making everyone empowered to feel to have there are conversations that might be challenging. Not everyone might be comfortable to have those conversations. So really being there, supporting everyone and listening and just really leading with empathy. That's
Life
kind
qualities.
of one of those things. Yeah. And the trust comes with it.
Right.
And that, to me, that's just how you treat someone else. So, and that's how you want to be treated when you are with the company.
Just be a good human, right? That seems to be like a running theme, which is just be a good human and treat people how you want to be treated, and you'll end up with a community that's good or better. I love that. Jumping to you, Theresa, the conversation around where do you see alumni going in the next few years? As you start to plan. 2 questions in that, and I'm merging a couple people's questions. One is, do you build a strategy each year? Do you build a goal each year? And the second is, what does the next 12 months of alumni look like, with return to work, no return to work, and all of these questions? Again, 2-hour question for that.
Yeah, I will first start. I think the biggest measure for our success really is around the employer brand. Like that is big for me. I also think about, how can we be able to promote the amazing work our alumni are doing? So for example, with our use of Philanthropy Cloud, we're going to be able to say by the end of the fiscal year, our alumni have contributed X amount of dollars to nonprofits. Our alumni have contributed X amount of service hours. That is awesome. It's showing that we are introducing these core values to employees when they're here at Salesforce, and they're taking them to their future organizations, right? And we're able to measure that social impact. So I think that is very cool. When I think about, I just want to expand the reach of the things that we're doing. When we think about our equality values, like I mentioned that I Am Remarkable workshop. In one workshop, we're able to get another person who's not a Salesforce employee certified on delivering this within their company. That's an amazing impact as well. We're able to say like our alumni have helped contribute X amount of employee referrals that were qualified and great. And now we have X amount of employees that are now part of Salesforce thanks to alumni referrals. That's awesome too. So I think there's so much to be said there. So yeah, it's kind of, I don't really know what the future holds for alumni program. There's just a few things of just measuring the impact. But if anything, I'd say that because we're so firmly rooted in our technology platform, that's what's really helped us through the pandemic. Like if I mentioned that Marketing Cloud email journey, right? You're nurturing these employees. When we were all in office, we still had those emails in place, right? And so when we went remote, they're still getting that friend or that gentle nudge of things they need to be doing. We used our Lightning platform to build an onboarding app. So it's like a task tracker app of all the things they need to do. So when we had that in office, and when we went out of office, we still had that. So we're actually working right now to build an offboarding app for our alumni so that they can access it. I'm doing kind of a little teaser. Sorry, TJ. But now if I say it, you're held accountable to do this.
It's due Friday, TJ.
Yes, but the idea is how can we leverage Slack, right? So that when an alumni or someone becomes an alumni, they could go into a Slack channel and see the things they need to do to make sure that they've fully offboarded. So again, we're just using technology and tools to make sure that things are seamless and easy for employees and for alumni.
Yeah, and I got another question. Actually, it wasn't even a question. It was just a lot of people saying I'm jealous. I got 2 I'm jealouses that came through to me because what we're hearing is that you want to do something with Slack and that's achievable. There's a lot of people on this call who are like, I wouldn't even know where to go. I wouldn't even know where to start. And I don't even know if I'd get that approval. But I think, as we round out this conversation, there's 3 core learnings. Number 1 is employer brand is king or queen, period. It just is. And you can measure that really well. It's not how many recruits, how many refers. Yes, maybe that's important, but how's our brand doing out there? Do people like it? Are people engaging with it? That's the KPI. And it doesn't have to be so explicit of it converted this number of people. It's the right
well,
thing
the Glassdoor thing is amazing too. Can you imagine if you have a high rated Glassdoor review from someone who's leaving the organization? Sometimes you get these like bitter employees that want to leave, but ours are like, oh my gosh, spent 10 years at Salesforce. It was amazing. I loved XYZ. And you can see that was a prior employee. Like that is also gold, right?
Yeah. So that's huge, that kind of social impact. The second is the size of your team and the use of technology and just to get on with it and to automate and to scale and just get on with it, period. Yeah. Because now there's no excuses. You really set the bar extraordinarily high of there's no excuses of too busy. And I love that. And I think that third, that more than anything, is that equality. Just because you're an alumni, it doesn't actually give you a competitive advantage getting through the door. It might give you one individually because you know the people, you know the conversations, you know the values going in, but your recruiter's going to stick to that.
I mean, I think a perfect example is when I joined Salesforce as an account executive, we had one product. It was SFA, Salesforce Automation. That was all we had. Now we have over 400 product SKUs, right? Like 400 different products to sell. Like if I came back, I would not be in an advantage because when I was at Salesforce as a salesperson, I just sold one product and now we have Marketing Cloud, Philanthropy Cloud, Commerce Cloud, all of these products, right? So again, that's to just read it on Mira, like it doesn't give you an advantage, but one thing that does give you is that you understand the culture and you appreciate the values and the culture that we have here.
I absolutely love all of this. There is no way I'm not following with TJ about your offboarding app on Lightning because I know everyone's going to care about that. By the way, TJ, you're late. It was due yesterday. So with that, Theresa, Mira, you both have been amazing sports. Thank you so much for taking this time with us. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your insights, your wisdom, and all of that.
James, I need to thank you for not asking us to prepare slides. So this has been lovely. So thank you. No slide decks, just great conversation.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day, everybody else. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.